Hey guys, what's up? Got some controversial stuff here to show. Hope you like it. Seems that the Brits have a problem with Black Lives Matter, and rightly so, just like the people in the U.S. So let's get into it.
Many members have said they want more Black history taught, but they don't seem to be aware of what is actually on the curriculum. Our curriculum is not the curriculum of 50, 40, or even 20 years ago. Children today are able to learn about the British Empire and colonialism, about the transatlantic slave trade and its abolition, and of how our history has been shaped by people of all ethnicities, as well as having the opportunities to study non-European cultures such as Mughal India or the Benign Empire, which is where my ancestors decided to have their own opportunity to take over the world in their own way. Pupils can currently study migration empires and the people in the AQA history GCSE, for example. Remember that Ilford North is quite wrong to say that that's the only place that it can be learned. There are many other exam bodies that do offer this. But our curriculum does not need decolonizing for the simple reason that it is not colonized. We should not apologize for the fact that British children primarily study the history of these islands. And it goes without saying that the recent fad to decolonize maths, decolonize engineering, decolonize the sciences that we have seen across our universities to make race the defining principle of what is studied is not just misguided, but actively opposed to the fundamental purpose of education. The curriculum by its very nature is limited. There are a finite number of hours to teach any subject, and what we haven't heard in this debate from those members who want more added to it on both sides of the house is what necessarily must be taken out. Perhaps we'll get to that on another day. Members such as the member for Islington North and many others have raised the Black Lives Matter movement. The member for Streatham raised the education guidance and believes that we're trying to stop children from becoming activists. Another member, apologies, I've forgotten who it was who mentioned it. However, what we are against is the teaching of contested political ideas as if they are accepted facts. We don't do this with communism, we don't do this with socialism, we don't do it with capitalism. And I want to speak about a dangerous trend in race relations that has come far too close to home to my life, and it's the promotion of critical race theory, an ideology that sees my blackness as victimhood and their whiteness as oppression. I want to be absolutely clear, this government stands unequivocally against critical race theory. Some schools have decided to openly support the anti-capitalist Black Lives Matter group, often fully aware that they have a statutory duty to be politically impartial. Black lives do matter, of course they do, but we know that the Black Lives Matter movement, capital BLM, is political. I know this because at the height of the protest, I saw white Black Lives Matter, I've been told of white Black Lives Matter protesters calling, and I apologize for saying this word, calling a black armed police officer guarding Downing Street in Kent. That is why we do not endorse that movement on this side of the house. It is a political movement, and what would be nice would be for members on the opposite side to condemn many of the actions that we see this political movement instead of pretending that it is a completely wholesome anti-racist organization. There is a lot of pernicious stuff that is being pushed, and we stand against that. We do not want to see teachers teaching their white pupils about white privilege and inherited racial guilt. And let me be clear, any school which teaches these elements of critical race theory as fact, or which promotes partisan political views such as defunding the police without offering a balanced treatment of opposing views is breaking the law. Members have mentioned the police. Our history is our own, it's not America's. Too often, those who campaign against racial inequality import wholesale a narrative and assumptions that have nothing to do with this country's history and have no place on these islands. Our police force is not their police force. Since its establishment by Robert Hill, our police have operated on the principle of policing by consent, and it gives me tremendous pride to still, in 2020, live in a nation where the vast majority of our police officers are unharmed. On the history of Black people in Britain, again, our history of race is not America's history of race. Most Black British people who have come to our shores were not brought here in chains, but came voluntarily due to their connections to the UK and in search of a better life. I should know I am one of them. And we have our own joys and sorrows to tell. From the Windrush generation to the Somali diaspora, it is a story that is uniquely ours. And if we forget that story, to replace it with an imported, Americanized narrative of slavery, segregation, and Jim Crow, we erase not only the history of Black Britain, but the history of every other community that has contributed to the society and has also been a victim of racism or discrimination from the Pakistani community to the Jewish community. On delivering a race equality strategy, I've listened to members opposite talk about the race equality strategy. They know that this government has set up a commission on race and ethnic disparities, but they have not engaged with it. What they don't want a race equality strategy. What they want is for the government to adopt their race equality strategy, and that's not what we're doing. Mr. Speaker, we won an election just a year ago. I'm afraid I don't have enough time to give way. Mr. Speaker, we won an election a year ago. If members on the other side want to implement their race equality strategy, they should go ahead and win an election, win the support of the British people, and then they can have their way. But at the moment, this is a Conservative government, and we are going to do this in the way that we believe the people of this country want. I'm afraid I'm not giving way. I've only got 3 minutes, and I have more than 3 minutes of content. Mr. Speaker, in her speech, the member for Brent Central said she hoped I learned something from her. Now it's time for me to give her a couple of lessons too, although I don't believe she's in her place. She said in her speech, we need to look at history and we need to improve it. Lesson number 1, you cannot improve history, you can only learn from it. What we can improve is the future, and that is what this government has been doing over the last 10 years. I won't rely on statistics in the interest of time. Other members on this side of the House have already done so. Lesson number 2, Black history is not the history of institutional racism. Listening to some members across the House, it's quite clear that they don't know the difference. It is not true, as the member for Liverpool Riverside said, that African history was interrupted by slavery. Also shows an ignorance of geography, because West African history is different from African history. As probably the only member of this House who actually grew up and went to school in Africa, I can tell you that's not what we're taught. Much more is taught about the history of Black slave traders who existed before and after the transatlantic slave trade. In fact, the most notable statue in the city of Lagos, where I grew up, is that of Madam Tinubu, biggest one. It's now equivalent to Trafalgar Square. She was a slave trader. She was also a freedom fighter and a much loved icon. Her slave trading is not celebrated, but her fight against colonizers is. In Nigeria, she's recognized as a complex character, as all historical figures are, and heaven help anyone who would try to pull this statue down. There is much that we can learn from Nigeria about how to handle the issue of statues. But why does this issue mean so much to me, Mr. Speaker? It's not just because I'm a first-generation immigrant. It's because my daughter came home from school this month and said to me, we're learning Black History Month because every other month is about white history. This is wrong, and this is not what our children should be picking up. These are not the values I have taught her. They are instead yet another sign of the pernicious identity politics that looks at individuals primarily as groups of biological characteristics. People often don't realize when it has taken hold, and I know that many of them are well-meaning. But what I really want to finish with is the story of Tom Molyneux. He was a Black boxer who freed himself from slavery in the US, and he moved to England in 1809. I would have said so much more, but I'm out of time, Mr. Speaker. But what his story tells us is that this is a country that welcomes people, and that Black people from all over the world have found this to be a great and welcoming country. These are the values as a Black woman I'm teaching my Black daughter. We must never take it for granted, and this Black History Month never celebrate the Black talent we are blessed with, the progress we have made in accepting one another, and the contribution Black people have made in making us who we are as a nation. Thank you.
Okay. That's basically what was said. Okay. And I agree with her. I agree with her wholeheartedly. Because Black Lives Matter isn't about education and helping blacks. It's about, turning one race against another. That's what it's about. Unfortunately, that's what it's about. It's about, placing victimhood on blacks and making whites who didn't grow up in that time period of racism. Okay, whites who had nothing to do with any racial attacks, enemies, causing more of a divide. And that's not the way America or Europe are going to survive, having a divide. And that's not how the country is going to heal. It's all about trying to find, peace, and to be able to fix the problems of racism. You don't fix it by, beating up cops, beating up white people, vandalizing, destroying property, and oppressing white people who have nothing to do with slavery back in the day or any hate crimes. The people who, enslaved our ancestors, they're long dead and burning in hell. Okay? The main source should be to attacking white supremacy. You don't attack it just by, screaming your voice and raising your voice loud. That's not how you attack white supremacy. Okay? You attack white supremacy by having reform. That's what you do. You have it by attacking it that way. By having reform, building bridges of, trying to resolve issues instead of attacking each other and being at each other's throat. Reform on both sides, the black community and the police department. The police department with deadly, inhumane tactics, and reforming the black community in cutting out the stop snitching code, turning in drug dealers, and having zero tolerance for anyone involved in drug dealing. Especially the women dating drug dealers and men being involved in drug dealing. And black women dating drug dealers has been going on for decades in black America. Don't know how long it's gone on in London. But I guarantee when you put a stop to that, you start putting down social consequences and shunning people for doing that, people will start to understand you cannot be, dating drug dealers, people who are poisoning the community. I guarantee when you say things like that, people will get a clear understanding that it's not tolerated, it's not socially acceptable. Okay? And also putting, stiff penalties for cops who decide to target blacks for no reason and use excessive force when when excessive force does not need to be used. That's the way to go. instead of having everybody at each other's throats. That's not going to help anything. It's not. Black Equalities Minister from UK denounces Black Lives Matter critical race theory. Black Lives Matter is under fire in the UK by Kemi Badenoch, an Equalities Minister who says the movement exacerbates a dangerous trend of teaching white peoples about white privilege and inherited racial guilt. Ms. Badenoch, who is Black, recently told colleagues that Black Lives Matter is a political movement masquerading as a benign call for equality. What we are against is the teaching of contested political ideas as if they are accepted facts. The Tory MP said, "We don't do this with communism, we don't do this with socialism, we don't do this with capitalism." The conservative added that too much of what Black Lives activists advocate for, particularly when it comes to critical race theory, is too close to home. It's an ideology that sees my blackness as victimhood and their whiteness as oppression. She continued, "I want to be absolutely clear. This government stands unequivocally against critical race theory. Some schools have decided to openly support the anti-capitalist Black Lives Matter movement." Oh yeah, Patrisse Cullors, one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, once again, she said it. She's a trained Marxist, as they all are, often fully aware that they have a statutory duty to political impartial. Black Lives Matter. Black lives do matter. Of course they do. But we know that Black Lives Matter movement, capital BLM, is political. That's right. It's political. They don't care about anybody else but themselves. That's the problem. All right. They care about socialism. And socialism, has killed a lot of people. It has. It has destroyed lives. And this Marxism was created in the mind of a satanic Karl Marx who just wanted to destroy humanity. Ms. Badenoch said that she's already witnessed a glimpse of the racial friction caused by critical race theory played out in practice. "I know this because at the height of the protest, I've been told of white Black Lives Matter protesters calling apologize a Black armed police officer guarding Down Street as a pet, the N-word." She said that is why we do not endorse that movement on this side of the house. It is a political movement, and what would be nice would be for members on the opposite side to condemn any actions we see in this political movement instead of pretending it is completely wholesome anti-racist organization. No, the racist organization. Pretty much. Like straight up, racist organization. And it's twisted. Okay? They want the destruction of the traditional family unit, although they have taken it off their mission statement. That still stays. They don't care about anybody but pushing their agenda. All right? Their agenda is socialism and the LGBT agenda. That's all they're for, not Black lives. All right. If you like the content, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Later.